what BC First Peoples has taught me through this past year and what I have learned from it. Before taking BC First Peoples, I knew very little about Indigenous history and cultures in Canada. Throughout these 6 units, I learned about Indigenous communities, oral traditions, identity, rights, land, and residential schools. But more importantly, I learned how these topics still affect people today. Taking this course at the start of the year, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. But after this course, it has changed my perspective about where I lived, the history of Canada, and the importance of reconciliation in British Columbia. In this video, I will reflect on what I learned, how it impacted me personally, and how I can continue applying these lessons that I've learned beyond this classroom. Unit 1: Indigenous Communities and Culture. In Unit 1, I learned about the diversity of Indigenous communities across Canada and British Columbia. Before this class, I didn't realize there were so many different nations, languages, and traditions. I learned that Indigenous peoples lived sustainably with the land and relied on hunting, harvesting, fishing, and building their own homes and tools. This made me reflect on how much I take for granted today. One thing I consider a gift is having food and shelter and safety provided for me. Indigenous peoples had to work hard for their survival while protecting their culture and community, which I think is really hard to do. This unit has also taught me that Indigenous cultures are not all the same. Each nation has its own traditions, beliefs, and history. Learning this helped me become more respectful and opened my eyes toward the Indigenous community and the First Nations people. Unit 2: Oral Traditions. In Unit 2, I learned about how oral traditions and how stories are passed down through generations. Oral traditions are important because they preserve culture, language, teachings, and identity. Before modern technology and written records, storytelling was how Indigenous communities passed their knowledge and life lessons through generations. This unit reminded me of my own experience that I had with my dad. When I was younger, he used to tell me stories about Filipino warriors. He kept telling me these stories, and eventually it got stuck in my head. These stories stayed with me for years, even till today. I feel like it is similar with Indigenous communities telling repetitive stories to kids until it is stuck in their heads, and then they can tell it to the next generation. This passing on of information helped me understand why storytelling is powerful and why preserving culture matters. Moving forward, I want to continue listening and respecting to stories from different people and cultures, instead of ignoring or misunderstanding them, because they can be really important. Unit 3: Names and Identity. In Unit 3, I learned about the importance of names and identity. I discovered that many places in Canada and British Columbia are named using Indigenous words or inspired by Indigenous languages. I also reflected on my own name and realized how important names are to identity, family, and culture. Indigenous children who went to residential schools were often renamed and forced to abandon their identities. Learning this made me appreciative of my own name even more. One thing I consider a gift is being able to keep my identity and freely learn about my own culture. This unit taught me that the names carry history and meaning. Because of this, one action I want to take moving forward is respecting people's names and identities instead of making assumptions or jokes about their names. Unit 4: Rights and Court Cases. In Unit 4, I learned about Indigenous rights and important court cases in Canada. Before this class, I didn't fully understand why many Indigenous communities still face challenges today. Learning about these court cases showed me how long Indigenous people have had to fight for recognition, land, and rights. One thing I consider a gift is that I have never had to fight for basic rights or recognition in the same way. This unit also taught me that decisions made by government and courts can affect generations of people. It reminded me that before judging situations, it is important to hear and understand both sides and learn the history behind the issues. Unit 5, Land and Colonization. In Unit 5, I learned about colonization and how Indigenous peoples lost ownership and control over their land. I learned that the land that we live on today was often never formally surrendered by Indigenous nations. When we acknowledge that we live on unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, we are recognizing their connection to this land. This changed how I think about where I live and the history behind Canada's borders and maps. One thing I consider a gift is being able to live peacefully without a fear of losing my home or community. This unit taught me that maps and borders do not always show the full history of the land. Unit 6, Residential Schools. Unit 6 was easily the most important unit to me. It had the biggest emotional impact on me because it's very serious. I learned about residential schools and how Indigenous children were taken away from their families, cultures, and languages. Many children experience trauma, abuse, and isolation. Families and communities were affected for generations. Learning this made me realize how fortunate I am to be able to go back to school safely, live with my family, and practice my culture freely. One thing I can take action on moving forward is showing empathy and not judging people without understanding their experiences. This unit reminded me that reconciliation is more important because the impacts of residential schools still affect Indigenous communities today. Reconciliation means learning the truth, respecting Indigenous peoples, and working toward better relationships in the future. Give back and carry forward. This project is an example of me giving back because I'm sharing what I learned and helping spread awareness about Indigenous history and experiences. Reciprocity means learning from others while also showing respect and giving something back in return. By reflecting on these lessons and sharing them with others, I can contribute to greater understanding and respect. I also understand that reconciliation does not end with this project or this class. Reconciliation is something that continues through education, respect, listening, and action. Moving forward, I want to continue learning about Indigenous perspectives, challenging stereotypes when I hear them, and acknowledge the Indigenous lands where I live. In conclusion, BC First Peoples taught me more than Indigenous history. It taught me about empathy, gratitude, identity, and respect. I now better understand the experiences of Indigenous peoples have faced and why reconciliation matters today. This course changed how I view Canada and the land where I live. The lessons I learned will stay with me beyond this classroom and continue to influence how I treat others in the future.